Hi guys, it's Carlo here. Thank you for listening to our latest episode. It's the support of our community like you that allows us to continue to grow and make this into something truly extraordinary. If you enjoyed today's episode and you would like to listen to it without the interruption of ads and maybe even experience some bonus content, I'd invite you to join us on our newly launched Patreon. And if maybe that's not something you can do right now, please consider liking, subscribing, sharing, and commenting on places like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook, all that good stuff. You'll find us under @Millennials and Community for pretty much all of those. Thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again soon.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome to the Millennial and Community Podcast. On this week's episode, Matt and Carlo explore the idea of escapism, how we use various activities, both good and bad, to escape from our hectic lives, how these can be fulfilling and also damaging, how you can use them to your benefit, and how if you don't have one, you really should. Thank you for being part of our community.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to this next episode of the Millennials and Community Podcast. As always, I'm Matt, this is Carlo, and we are coming to you today with another new episode about another new topic that we've always been interested in but needed to do a little bit of research to feel like we were ready to tell you about today. As always, we're going to start things off with a little bit of an icebreaker to kick us off today. And the icebreaker that I want to pose to you, Mr. Corrado, is this. What fictional character do you think you would get along with famously?
Ooh.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this next episode of the Millennials and Community
Part
Podcast.
of me wants
As
to
always,
say
I'm Matt.
Tony
This
Stark,
is Carlo,
Iron Man.
and we are coming to you today.
But
with
even he's a little
another
too
new episode
out there
about
for
another
me
new
sometimes.
Do you like to be handed stuff?
Ooh.
No. No. I'm going to go with Captain America. I had to
like,
give this one some thought.
part of me
And this
wants
is the
to
reason.
say Tony
One,
Stark, Iron
I
Man.
like the morality that he has.
But even he's a little
Two,
too
I would
out there
razz
for me
him
sometimes. Do you like to be
incessantly
handed
about
stuff?
not swearing.
No.
Or swearing.
No.
It would be hilarious.
I'm going to go with
because
Captain
I
America.
unfortunately
I had
have
to give
quite
this
the
one some
potty
thought,
mouth.
and this is the reason.
And I think it would just be kind
One,
of fun to
I
make
like
fun of
the
Captain America
morality
that way.
that he.
All right, so you decided, just so I have this clear, you decided Captain America because you feel you're too much like Tony Stark, so you would have a similar dynamic as the two of them have. That's what I heard, right?
That's not what I said.
That's what I got. You're like, well, I don't think I'd get along with Tony Stark because we're too similar.
Sure, let's go with that.
Perfect. Good. For me, I'd have to say Ted Lasso. And this is front and center because it just finished the series and cried for most episodes. But I just really, really feel like as a character, he embodies everything that I try to do. Obviously, none of us are perfect and not able to do it all the time. But the way that he's able to take these positivity, optimism driven philosophies and apply them in professional sports, which, you talk to anyone who's been a high level athlete and the game or the sport, regardless of what that is, changes when you go from being an amateur athlete to, even a high level amateur athlete, whether it's, college, Olympics, these sorts of things. There's a certain time where high performance sport changes, and his ability to translate the positive optimism that we think all sports should be into a professional setting, I just feel like we would get along really well in terms of our philosophy. I would agree with that. Brilliant. So, Carlo, what are we talking about today?
Today is the concept of escapism. So what do we mean by escapism? Well, it's this idea that, regular life sometimes can get difficult, or it can get overwhelming, or it can just be normal. It can be blasé, for lack of a better term. And we need to have certain abilities to escape the reality that is our world and get to a place that is maybe a little bit more fantastic or a little bit easier to deal with, or maybe just a little bit more exciting than what our regular lives are. So today's episode is going to be, maybe a couple examples that you and I have of what we do for that. It's also going to be how you might be able to implement something like that if you don't already have it, or maybe you do have it and it's a little unhealthy, and we want to address that and see how millennials can use that to deal with the ever-changing, ever-difficult world that we live in today.
Well, and I think you kind of segued really nicely into my next question of why escapism, why now? Like, why was this something that for us was high on the list of topics we want to talk about this season.
Well, it's something that we have kind of glanced over several times throughout the last season. You know, we talk a lot about things to promote our own mental health, things to, learning new skills, things to broaden the horizons that we have in our lives. And that is kind of what escapism is about. When somebody says escapism, the word escape can somewhat seem very harsh, right? So somebody might say escapism and they will immediately jump to the idea of like, well, you're avoiding your problems. That is not what I believe escapism to be. Escapism can be something that is genuinely very healthy for people. And in the effort of looking at the world and all of the struggles that are presented to us on a day-to-day basis, to have a safe space or a safe mental area that we can go back to and kind of withdraw and enjoy some other things in life, I think is really important and might help reduce the stress for a lot of people. So it's not something we haven't talked about before, but now we're just kind of narrowing in on that to try and make people even more aware that, hey, this is probably something you should have in your life.
Yeah, and to your point, this is definitely something we've addressed in several other episodes. I mean, we've talked about play and the impact that it has on addressing things like burnout, stress, feelings of sadness, feelings of depression. These are all certain things that escapist activities, behaviors, tendencies can help us address. But, you know, you actually have a really great term for this that you use and you employ rather readily. And you talk about like active brain rest. And so how, you know, maybe before we get into some more generic types of escapism, like how would you equate the two things? Because to me, when you talk about the reason for escapism, that was the piece that you talked about a lot that came to mind for me.
The active brain rest? Well, yeah. So for me, I'm one of those people that can't really stop. Right? I don't have the ability to really sit and watch TV, like people that watch series, just boom, 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 boom. I can't do it unless it's a very enthralling thing for me. So I'll be very often sitting on the couch watching a movie, watching a TV show on my computer, working on a project, maybe playing a video game. So sometimes people may look at that and go, well, your serotonin levels are too high. You're crazy all over the place. I look at that as I don't need my brain to stop. I need my brain to not be overthinking and over focused in on things I have no control over.
Right.
So my escapism is very often things I do have control over.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's a really common piece. And I think that's key to escapism of all forms. It's key to play in general, this sense that we are crafting an environment for ourselves where we feel that we have autonomy, independence, control, and that can be so key, especially when we're facing depression, stress, burnout. It often comes as a result of this helplessness that we experience in our day-to-day lives. You touched on, and I know we're going to dive deeper into types of escapism that can be healthy or unhealthy, but maybe let's do kind of like a flash brainstorm to start out with. Like, what are all of the different, maybe not all of them, because certainly we can't think of them all. What is a list? Give us a list of like different types of escapism and different activities that could be considered escapist.
Sure. Well, why don't I give the ones that I know that I use and that I'm aware of, and then you can chime in with any ones that are maybe a little bit more crucial to you. Video gaming is a big part for me, and I think we're going to talk a lot about that in the next episode. Working on projects is a huge one for me. I recently bought a new, very expensive 3D printer, and I have been so enthralled by this new side project and this new wonderful opportunity that's been a big escape for me. Working on the podcast, recording the podcast has been really big for me. Getting out with friends, as we're going to do after we record today, is a big form of escapism for me to kind of recenter myself. And I've mentioned it in the past before. I have a dedicated night every week on Fridays that I actively practice escapism. That's my night to come home, make a nice dinner, get settled in, play the video game, watch the movie, do the thing that I wouldn't really give myself permission to do throughout the rest of the week because, responsibilities, I'm an adult. And
contrary to what anyone might believe.
Right? So those are the things that I find. The gym is a massive one for me, and I've been a little under the weather this week and actually haven't been to the gym all that much, and it's killing me. My body wants to move. I want to have that space where I have my music, I have my podcast in my ear, and I can just shut out the world and lift heavy things, right? So for me, there's a lot of different things, and I've always found it really cool that it doesn't have to fit one specific criteria. It can be a whole bunch. So like, what do you say? What do you think your escapisms are? What are the ones that come to mind for you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly fitness is one that's very one that we share. We've talked about that lots before. For me, it is one thing that it's something that I can challenge myself. I can go and see growth that is completely independent to me. Any sort of success I have or failure I have is directly attributable to me. And that's something that I really, really value. And it goes back to that narrative of control. So fitness is key. For me, I actually do really enjoy getting to watch TV shows or watch movies, and sometimes I lose this sense of wanting to. I lose the ability or the focus or the attention to actually finish a movie. So, for example, last weekend, I think I watched half of 3 different movies over the course of a morning, just as I was milling about the house. So it just takes some time sometimes, but that is a form of removal for me. And social time, of course, is huge as well. And yeah, those are some of the main ones that I practice anyways. But I would say too that there are others, of course. Like neither of us are huge readers, in spite of the big pile of books behind the camera that's mocking me. So reading is a very common one for a lot of people. Things like you mentioned video games already. A lot of people, food is a form of escape, whether that be cooking or just eating. Can be one as well, and certainly like different types of I think there's different levels, and this is maybe getting to where we're going to talk about in terms of the healthiness of some vices and some escapists, but certainly like different forms of drugs and alcohol certainly are used as escape mechanisms for a lot of people as well. So I think that it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, that certainly there are healthy forms of escape and less healthy forms of escape that we tend to find. But
very true. Before
we dive into that, I mean, we talked about escapism being a beneficial thing because it allows us to remove ourselves from the struggles, the stresses of air quotations, real life. We also, recognize that it allows us to have some semblance of control. Are there other benefits that you can think of as to why people seek escapism?
Yes. I think for a lot of people, it can be very centering, right? Like, especially if you do it as a regular thing, as a habit, it can really bring you back into understanding that you are you. Right? Because the world demands a lot of things from us. Our jobs can demand a lot of us professionally. Our social obligations can demand a lot of us to be, maybe a little bit more outgoing than we are normally. So to have this kind of sense of escapism, whatever it is, it allows you to be genuinely you. And of course, I'm talking in a little bit more of a healthy escapism kind of idea, because if your sense of escape is large amounts of alcohol, you are very genuinely you in that case, maybe to a fault. But if it's doing something that you would deem to be productive or relaxing or fun, when people are having fun, they are more themselves than anything else. When you're laughing, that laugh is very you, right? And to me, that is a very exciting thing to understand, that you are no more genuine at any other time than when you are centered in yourself and you are doing something that brings you joy.
Okay, so this is really, really interesting. I want to tweak this a little bit, or offer like a challenge to this, because I think your comment about the relationship to less healthy escapism, things like drugs and alcohol, is relevant here. I think that maybe escapism is not just a means of being the best or the most genuine version of yourself, but I think it's the act of seeking the most genuine version of yourself. So for people who have done more of that reflective work, who have a better sense of themselves, some of those escapism activities are going to allow you to be that centered version of yourself. But I think for a lot of people that don't quite have that figured out, or maybe you're going through some transitions in your life and you have your center shifted, I think that escapism offers us an opportunity to go looking for the most genuine version of us.
And that's very true. And it's one of the reasons I think that we're talking about this now, because how many people out there practice escapism without even understanding that that's what they're doing. Right. So I think that's exciting on two sides. One, you are actually seeking out a way to be genuinely you without knowing it. And then once that switch flips and you're like, oh, this is something that I am doing out of a need for myself, it opens up a door to be like, okay, well, if I'm seeking genuine me, who do I want that person to be?
So at what point does that switch flip then? Because I think there are a lot of people that go through life where I guess the term that comes to mind for me is weekend warrior, right? You work your 40, 50, 70 hours a week, right? And then Friday comes, you buy that 12-pack of beer, you sit down, watch the game, right? These you crack open the bottle of wine, whatever it is. And I think there are a large proportion of people that not only don't identify that they're doing these things as a form of escape, but aren't conscious of the fact that it has the potential to take them on this kind of like self-reflective journey. Obviously, you and I are way more reflective humans than most people, and maybe we spend too much time, but that's a debate for another day. Where does that switch flip? Like, I guess maybe I'll bring it back to you. Like, at what point in time did your experience with video games become more than just I get to play video games, or I get to have a new means of interacting with my friends through gaming?
Sure. Well, I've gamed since my mom bought me my first Super Nintendo and I got Mario to the top of the flag. Like, I've been gaming since I was a kid and I never stopped. So to answer when that switch flipped, it was in my adult life where, of all the stresses that I had been going through, the one place that I could go and express some creativity and do some things I wouldn't normally do inside of a video game, that was in my adult life. And I think that there's this point on the broader question of when does the switch flip? If you're doing something that is, grabbing the 12-pack and sitting on the couch and watching a football game and drinking the whole 12-pack, there comes a point where if that is truly fulfilling to you, you will never get bored of it. But if it isn't truly fulfilling for you, there will come a point where you have this kind of inner thought of like, I could be doing something else, or you become bored of it, or you become frustrated with it, or that sense, that thing you thought was allowing you to escape has become just as monotonous and just as part of regular life for you that everything else is. And that stops being an escape for you. So when that realization comes, I think is when people actually start to actively seek a sense of escape in something that is maybe a little bit more healthy, a little bit more genuine, or a little bit more new for them. And for some people, that realization may never come, but I know that's what happened to me.
And so when that happened for you, was it an automatic, or did this feeling, so you talk about this idea of getting bored or discontent with some of those kind of typical routines, behaviors. Was there one day where you woke up and you're like, I need something else? Or was it a feeling that kind of ate away at you for a little while? What was it that pushed you over?
It was a feeling that ate away for a little bit. So during COVID, because there was nothing else really to do, I played a lot of video games. And I enjoyed the heck out of it. It was great. Yeah. But there came a point where it's like, I'm playing the same game, doing the same thing. This doesn't feel as rewarding as it used to. And that was when I made the decision to buy a 3D printer. And then as soon as I did that, it was like, okay, well, now I need to learn how this thing works, and now I need to learn how to fix it, and now I need to learn how to 3D model. And then I took it one step further, and I developed this action plan of spending 30 minutes a day working on a new skill, which was learning how to 3D model. So it kind of crescendoed from there. Right?
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. So this is really, there's a couple of different directions I want to go. I'm trying to figure out where to go next. Let's talk about the healthiness maybe next.
Sure.
I think escapism, for as much value as it brings us, there are a couple of different ways in which escapism can be unhealthy. The ones that come to mind first for me, the first one would be physically unhealthy. So things like alcohol, drugs, food, even when we're talking about overconsumption. Like certainly there's some of these things that are a detriment to our physical health. I think that there's probably the other one that jumps to mind. There's things that are detrimental to our financial health, right? Both of us have hobbies and vices that can be very, very expensive.
Yeah.
And so, I guess, how do you assess do we think of it as an ROI? Like, do we think of it as a return on investment of investing both our physical self or our financial means into forms of escape? And then how do we balance? Because when things are when we're talking about fulfillment, when we're talking about, spiritual, mental well-being that these activities offer us, how can we possibly quantify the ROI of these activities, either in terms of physical investment of having a cocktail or 5 or the price tag of it?
Well, and it's interesting that we're talking about this now and that you're asking it the way that it is. So I mentioned I bought a new 3D printer. This printer was, $1,000. And for somebody that has no idea how 3D printing works, that's an expensive printer. Now, why would I invest $1,000 into a 3D printer when I already owned one? And I have one that I have invested lots of money and time into making quite good. Why would I do that? Well, there came this moment not last weekend, the weekend before, where I'm working and I'm trying to print something. I'm actually trying to finish a gift for you, and the printer isn't working. And it's not working, and it's not working, and it's not working. And no matter what I try, it's not working. It's not giving me the thing that I want. And I've owned this printer for 3 years, and it was this idea of like this thing that I genuinely love and genuinely enjoy has become another piece of work for me. So I sat down, I looked at the new printer, which had been in the back of my mind for months, and I finally clicked the buy button. And as soon as it came, I have been printing nonstop on this thing because it works. And it just always works pretty much. And it's to the point now where it's like, I've finished all of these projects that I anticipated to take me another 6 months in the last week. What the heck do I print? Right? And I'm excited again about this activity. So the ROI for me on the experience of financially investing in this new thing has been massive. Right? So when we talk about the ROI of our escapism, if it's something that is genuinely bringing you joy and excitement, that ROI is almost instantaneous. You can justify financially investing into it. You can justify time-wise investing into it. But that's, again, that switch that needs to flip of, is this thing that I'm doing genuinely allowing me to escape the stressors and the worries of the rest of my life? Or is it something that I am continuing to strive for and continuing to try and do, and it's now adding additional stressors for me?
Right.
Then it's not escapism. It's just another thing on your list.
Right. Okay, so this is great. You took me exactly where I wanted to go.
Perfect.
Well done. Okay, so then if that's the case, and I think that, we would certainly agree, and I would be hard-pressed to find someone I think that would refute this, that joy, happiness is probably just as addictive as any other addictive substance that you could possibly hope, right? We're naturally going to seek out things that make us feel good. That is just the human condition. So when we talk about the ROI of escapism being the degree to which it makes us feel good, when we start to find those things that bring that to us, we are going to seek out more of it. So we talked about money. We talked about skirted around the issue of like the physical investment and things that may be unhealthy. But talk to me about time.
Sure.
Because if we are then saying that, yes, the return on investment is the happiness, the good feelings that we receive, therefore more must be better, right? But obviously there's certain time constraints. We can't invest that much of ourselves on an ongoing basis. So how do we know when it's too much?
Sure. Well, this sense of escapism that we get, it becomes something that we enjoy so much that, when it's a new thing, I think it can very quickly take over everything else. Yeah. Right? If anybody, that listens to us plays a video game, when a new video game comes out, that's all you want to play. When you discover a new hobby, that's all you want to do. You're at work and you're like, all I can do is think about this thing, right? But we are still adults. We still have our responsibilities. So when it's a new thing, I think you're allowed to be a little sucked into it. But when you start to notice that it's taking away from other things in your life, is when it starts to become a little bit unhealthy. But I think any good, healthy sense of escapism is going to find almost a balancing point, because you feel invigorated after, doing this thing. So going out into the real world and working really hard that day, or hitting the gym that day, or, doing the thing that you didn't want to necessarily do, like cleaning the house, becomes more tolerable, because you have a sense of joy and fulfillment in your life. And you know that these are just the cogs of life. You're willing to make them turn so that, once all the cleaning is done, once the meal prep is ready, once you've spent time with a significant other, whatever it is, you can then sit down and at the end of the day, maybe for half an hour, do that thing that you've been thinking about all day, feel good about that, and then go to bed and be like, today was a great day because I did all the things I wanted to and I got me time, right? Where if you don't have that, it becomes very difficult to slog your way through these things, because I don't feel like you have something to genuinely look forward to.
So what I'm hearing you say is the time that we invest in escapism is healthy so long as it does not detract from our ability to, I'm escaping enough if I'm still able to meaningfully contribute to all my responsibilities, to my work, to my relationship, to all of these things. That's how I know. And if the degree to which I'm participating in these things is taking away from my ability to contribute to my responsibilities, my relationship, my work, or it's demanding that I invest more time in those escapist behaviors, maybe those are the flags that we need to start noticing. If we're sacrificing the things that need to be done to do more of it, these are the red flags that we need to start.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much the gist of it. And, if anybody has ever had a conversation with a parent or a significant other about, out of concern for them doing something too much, you'll know that happens pretty quickly. Yeah. Right? If you're doing something that somebody in your life feels is not good for you, they will tell you. But I have never heard a story of someone hearing from their significant other, you go to the gym too much. You're taking care of yourself too much. Hey, those delicious meals you're learning how to cook, stop it. I've never heard of that. If somebody's got a story, I'd like to hear it, but so I think it becomes almost reaffirming when the outside world encourages you to continue doing those things. Like when I show you a 3D printing project that I've worked on, I don't ever hear you say, well, that maybe took too much of your time, Carlo. You're like, that's flipping cool, man. Yeah. Right? We encourage each other because we know it's something that we take enjoyment in.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so we've got millennials, we've got community. It's the name of the show. Let's tie it back. So one of the things when I was starting to do a little bit of digging on this topic that I found really, really interesting is the idea of treat culture. Have you heard of treat culture?
Yep.
So for those of you that may not be familiar, I'm going to do a a terrible job of bastardizing the definition of it. But essentially, it's this idea that millennials and Gen Z, as they start to enter the age where these things are relevant, are spending more of their hard-earned money treating themselves. And it's come from this sense of pessimism about the general economic state, that they don't feel like they have the capacity or the ability to make the big purchases, the home, the car, that these things are just too far out of reach given the economic climate, and they're going to therefore treat themselves to a vacation, nights out, whatever this kind of thing is. And this has become almost an escapist vice because they feel so helpless. So I guess, what are your thoughts on the idea of treat culture, and what other ways do you think that escapism intersects with the millennial experience?
Like, the concept of treat culture, I don't think is a new thing. It's been around for a very long time. We're just hearing more actively about it in major news sources because it's being painted as, well, millennials and Gen Zers are giving up on the idea of owning a home, are giving up on retirement, and they're living for today. That, sure, it's true. But there are people in other generations that have done that as well. And I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing, because if you look at Italian culture, because I'm Italian and I have a lot of Italian family, Italians tend to live for today. They work Monday through Friday. They go blow most of their money on the weekends, and then they go to work again. But they live a sense of joy throughout their entire lives kind of doing that. And if that's something that you think you can do and you want to do, go for it. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I feel good with money in the bank. So the money guy behind me is well, don't do that. Do it with responsibility. But again, if you find joy in it, do it. And I think, like all things, if it doesn't truly align with that sense of fulfillment for you, it will stop itself. Right? You will come to a point where all of the fun that you're having, all of the treats that you're buying, don't feel as good as they used to, or don't feel as good as having money in the bank, or don't feel as good as maybe the dream of buying the house that you thought you had. So you will naturally stop yourself, I think.
And I think the other thing that you need to, I need to include myself in this, that we need to be aware of too, is that we're not treating ourselves as a statement of status, right? Like, we're not doing it. Escapist activities should not be an opportunity for us to try to declare our status.
Yeah, we're not keeping up with the Joneses by how well we escape.
Exactly. So if we're looking at the things that we do for escapism, they should be uniquely for us and for our own intrinsic benefit. They shouldn't be a show of lavishness to the people around us. And so I think that that's really, really, really key. Of course, social media, and we're going to talk more about online communities in the next episode, but of course, social media has provided us this wonderful, wonderful way of feeling jealous of what we think other people have. And so it's very, very important that, we're not bringing ourselves to a level where we feel like every escapism opportunity is a way to show off the things that we get to escape doing. Very cool. Okay, so that's the millennial side. Now let's talk about community side, because to me, I think this is really interesting, because naturally the idea of escapism, we are looking to perhaps remove ourselves from certain communities, obviously temporarily, not even physically necessarily, but then also escapism offers us new communities. So you've talked to me a lot about the online communities in which you participate in a lot of your games with. Certainly we have people who we work out with and participate in our fitness journey with. That's another escapist community, but kind of make a little bit of sense for me of this idea that from a community level, the kind of natural irony of escapism might be that we're removing ourselves from certain communities to then go and participate in other communities. Like, make sense of that for me.
Well, have you ever been at a party and somebody says, well, what do you do for fun? And then you go, oh, well, I do this. And they go, I do that too. Or I have a friend that does that. Hey, come over here and talk to this guy. So like this thing that so innocently started as a way to escape the normality of our life all of a sudden has brought new experience and new people into that fold. And I think that is so exciting, because had you never started to practice that thing you found so much joy in, then that wouldn't have been something that came up at a party. It wouldn't have been something that you searched out an online community for. It wouldn't have been something that you searched out assistance with. And therefore, you would have never gained any extra community from that. And I think that goes to speak about a lot of new skills and a lot of new opportunities and a lot of new experiences, is that when you bring those things into your life, you naturally start to gravitate to, and vice versa, the other people that are a part of it, because you get excited about things. And when you are excited about things, that gets people excited to talk to you.
I love it. So to sum up what I heard you say, escapism is a means for us to try to better understand the most genuine version of ourselves. And in doing so, we become more... there becomes more depth to us. We're not just identified by our work, our relationships, we become a more holistic human, and therefore are better able to contribute or be a part of more and different communities.
Yeah. And this is actually something I've started practicing very recently in my life. When I meet someone new, what is the number one question most people ask you when they meet you for the first time?
What do you do for work?
What do you do for work? I don't ask people that question. I go, what are 2 things you did this week that were new and exciting?
Mm-hmm.
And the answers I've been getting from people are genuinely some of the coolest things. They will share a little win. They will share a fun experience, a laugh that they had. And I think that is something that the millennials and the Gen Zers are very quickly starting to adopt, is this idea of, I am not defined by what I do. I am defined by who I am.
Yeah.
And, you look at a lot of the hobbies and the skills that millennials have started picking up, the quote unquote old people, the boomer hobbies, making jam, baking bread, right? Farming and chickens. And you're hearing a lot about this in millennial communities, and there's the economic reason for it. But I think it's also something that people get really excited about, because to say that you have chickens that lay you eggs is cool. It's fun. It's something that you can be so excited and happy about, right? When somebody asks me, well, what do you do for fun? Well, let me show you this giant sword I 3D printed because it's a memory from a childhood game I used to play. That's something that's so exciting and genuinely me that very few other people might say.
I think that's really interesting. And I think that is somewhat unique to the millennial experience now. Not that I think it's unique to millennials, but given the age band in which millennials sit, I think that up until a short time ago, relatively speaking, millennials were impacted and influenced predominantly by boomers, Gen X, Gen Y. Yeah. Obviously, right? Because the other generation didn't exist yet. So we were influenced directly by the tendencies of the generations older than us. What I'm seeing now is, now that we see a generation, Gen Z, coming up behind us, we're actually have the opportunity to be influenced by them. And so a lot of the things that you're talking about, I actually think are behaviors that we as a generation are learning and embedding, because we're seeing Gen Z do it and do it well. We're seeing Gen Z come into the workforce and demand more balance for themselves. We're seeing them appreciate that they need to have balance. They need to not only be identified by their career, and that they need to be able to strike this overall balance. And I think now we're starting to be influenced by those behaviors. And it's really, really cool, especially on my team, because my team, most of them fall under the Gen Z band. And it's really, really cool to see how they are living as that version of themselves. And then it gives me the opportunity to learn from them too. So I think that's really brilliant.
Yeah, I like that. Again, it doesn't matter where that outside influence came from to make you start practicing this in a healthy way. But I think it's just very crucial. And my hope for this episode is that somebody who's been playing with the idea of finding something for themselves, not for you and your spouse, not for you and your kids, not for you and a coworker, you and a friend, but for something just for you. Yeah. I would really hope that you do, because the ROI on it can be massive.
Totally agree. So we do this at the end of all of our episodes, but just recently we came up with a fun, flashy name for it because just like everything else, we're obsessed with our acronym. So the end of our episodes starting today and moving forward are going to be MAC, Make Actions Count. So I want you to give us your top 1, 2, 3 pieces of advice. You just gave everybody one. Find an opportunity to escape that is about you and not necessarily about the people around you. What other pieces of advice would you give to people who want to make their actions count? Sure, for escapism.
Don't be afraid to be bad at something. Right? Because every new skill that you try, every new thing that you try to approach, you're going to be horrendous at, especially if you're the kind of person where I will go and look at Reddit at all the things that people do. And it's like, oh, that's amazing. I suck. And then a year will go by and I'll post something on Reddit and I'll get a response like that. That's amazing. I just started at this. Don't be afraid to be bad at anything that you're trying. Don't even be afraid to be bad at something that you're learning to enjoy, because that is part of the enjoyment is the skill progression.
Love that.
Right? What about you? What would you say?
I think for me, it would be make a time budget. And this is something that you and I do individually, and we check in on it every 6 months or so, or at least I do. But make a time budget. Understand how much of your time is going to work, family commitments, extracurriculars, and understand how much time you currently have available to participate in escapism. Understand how much time is realistic, or and just really understand how much time you're committing to the things that you do, and that's going to be better inform your ability to step into some of these hobbies or participate in these activities that are considered escapist.
Yeah, it's very true. You need to set not only a time budget, but a specific time to practice these things, because if you don't, regular life will find a way to take it away from you. And I can tell you, the weeks that I don't commit my Friday nights to this sense of escapism, the weekend following, the week following is much harder.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, we're bringing this episode to a close now, so we have one more question that we are going to leave everyone with, and then, of course, we'll practice our gratitude at the end as well. So, what is a tradition within any of your escapist communities that to an outsider would just seem just completely ridiculous and off the wall?
Sure. It's tough to pick. There's a couple. I'll give you the video gaming one because it is probably more relatable, especially for any women listening to our show that have a significant other that plays video games. The way that we speak to each other during a hardcore gaming session is borderline offensive, right? When you make a mistake, your best friends in that game will berate you and never let you go. And all you can ever do is just try to never make the mistake again. And it's never something that legitimately hurts your feelings because it's a video game. It doesn't matter. But the fact that they will just never let it go is the funniest thing to me. And to think that, some of your best friends are constantly making fun of you over this one small split-minute decision, to me is just hilarious and something you might not see anywhere else.
For me, I think, and I'll take it the sports route, I think one of the funniest traditions that happens amongst people who are avid sports fans is this incessant need to debate and argue who the best at a thing is. Not just the best right now, but historically, who has been the best quarterback, basketball player, whatever the case may be. It is the most ridiculous, objectively, if you zoom out, it is the most ridiculous idea that we need to spend hours and hours and hours debating whether a player 30 years ago or a player today, who was better, who would be more successful in each other's era. It is an outrageous thing that is completely nonsensical, and sports fans love it.
And I can confirm that because I love sports, but I'm not the sports watcher. So when somebody starts talking sports to me, I'll be like, yeah, move the thing from the thing to the other thing. Go sports. Meanwhile, you guys know that guy's number, that guy's, basket average, how high he can jump, you can know this, and you will know that about several hundred people and be able to just recall it on a moment. And to me, it boggles my mind because it's just not important to me. But...
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, sir, today, as always, super, super grateful for you. I think that one of the things that I'm very, very grateful for today as we navigate the new season, the second season of our podcast, is just all of, you talk about the willingness to be bad at something, and the benefit of being willing to do that is seeing the growth and progression. And I'm seeing and so grateful for the ways and the things that you've done to invest in making this podcast more successful with the different equipment and software and ideas, and just bringing that all together and experimenting with things to try to make this show the best that it can be. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And I hope that everybody is seeing the things that we're doing to try and make it better for you guys and for us too, because we want to be proud of what we put out there. My gratitude for you is that this is actually the first time we've seen each other since beginning of January. And there's lots of things that have happened in between now and then, and I'm excited that both of us live an exciting enough life that when we do get together, we get to share our stories and our experiences and feel joy for the other person as they went through those things, and that we're willing to share all of the fun that we had, even though we do separate things or live separate lives. And that to me is such a genuine part of friendship, is that we can live and be happy for each other through the lens of each other.
Love it. Yeah, absolutely love it. Well, with that takes a wrap on this episode. So thank you once again, everybody, for taking the time to listen, watch, participate in this experience with us. We hope that some of you somewhere might one day say, hey, I need an escape. I'm going to go listen to the Mac podcast. And if anybody ever says that, please let us know, because, our egos obviously need more validation. With that, have a great day, everybody. You know where to find us on all the socials, and we hope to connect with each of you soon.
See you later, guys.